On Halloween night, three best friends, Lily, Emma and Chloe, set out to explore the infamous Oakwood House, a crumbling mansion on the outskirts of town. The place had a sinister history. It was said that the family who lived there had vanished one night, leaving their belongings and dinner on the table, never to be seen again. Since then, rumors of ghosts, dark shadows and eerie laughter had kept the townsfolk away. But the girls were determined to make a thrilling video for their YouTube channel, so they gathered flashlights, a camera and a spirit board for a just-in-case moment. As they approached the house, it loomed like a shadow against the night sky. The front door creaked open, as though it was expecting them. With the camera rolling, Lily whispered, "Are we really doing this?" But she already knew the answer. They stepped inside, and the heavy silence was overwhelming, broken only by the soft echo of their footsteps on the dusty wooden floor. Cobwebs hung from every corner, swaying gently as though something invisible had disturbed them. Emma held up the flashlight, illuminating the peeling wallpaper and faded paintings of the Oakwood family, somber faces that seemed to watch their every move. "Let's start in the dining room," Chloe suggested, leading them through a narrow hallway that seemed to stretch endlessly in the dark. In the dining room, an enormous table was set with silverware, wine glasses and fine china, all covered in a thick layer of dust. It looked like the family had abandoned a lavish dinner years ago, as if they'd left in a hurry. Suddenly the temperature dropped. Lily shivered as she felt a chill creep up her spine. "Did you guys feel that?" she whispered. Before they could respond, a faint, ghostly melody drifted through the room. It sounded like a lullaby, sung by a distant voice filled with sorrow. The girls exchanged terrified glances. "Let's just keep moving," Emma suggested, trying to mask the tremor in her voice. The melody grew louder as they ascended the grand staircase to the second floor. Each step creaked under their weight, and shadows danced on the walls, as if something was moving just out of sight. When they reached the top, the hallway split into three directions. "Should we split up?" Chloe suggested nervously. Lily shook her head. "No way. We stay together." They turned right and found themselves in a child's bedroom. Dolls sat on shelves, their glassy eyes staring blankly. A small rocking chair sat in the corner, motionless at first, until it started rocking back and forth on its own. The girls gasped, and Emma instinctively pointed the flashlight at it. "Is this part of the ghost rumors?" Emma whispered. As if in response, a soft giggle echoed through the room. The girls spun around, but there was no one there. A doll on the shelf had fallen over, its painted face cracked, and its eyes seemed to follow them. The air grew heavier, and suddenly they all heard it. A child's voice, faint and haunting. "Play with me." Chloe's hand shook as she clutched the spirit board they'd brought. "Maybe we should see if we can make contact." Reluctantly, they gathered around the spirit board, placing their fingers on the planchette. Emma spoke first. "Is someone here with us?" The planchette jerked to yes. They pulled back, startled, but then placed their fingers down again, glancing nervously at one another. "What do you want?" Chloe asked, her voice barely a whisper. The planchette spelled out STAY. Suddenly, the door slammed shut. The girls jumped, adrenaline surging as they desperately pulled on the door handle. It wouldn't budge. From the hallway, they heard footsteps approaching, slow and deliberate. The lights began flickering, casting ominous shadows that crept closer, revealing the faint outline of a figure. The child's voice returned, louder this time. "Don't leave me alone," Emma screamed as a translucent figure of a young girl appeared at the foot of the bed. She was pale, with sunken eyes and a twisted smile, holding a teddy bear with one arm dangling loosely. "Who are you?" Lily asked, her voice trembling. The girl's eyes shifted to each of them, and she whispered, "I'm waiting for my family." Her voice turned dark, filled with resentment. "They left me, and you'll stay with me forever. Suddenly the walls seemed to close in. The dolls began falling from the shelves, one by one, their cracked faces laughing in unison. Shadows filled the room, circling the girls like a pack of wolves. The spirit board planchette moved on its own, spelling out words faster and faster. Stay, stay, stay. Panic overwhelmed them. Emma grabbed the flashlight, desperately shining it around the room, hoping to find an escape. The door was still shut tight, but there was a window. Without another thought, she ran to it, struggling to pry it open. "Hurry!" Chloe shouted, as the shadowy figure of the ghostly girl drifted closer, her eyes burning with anger. With a final push, the window opened, and they scrambled through, tumbling out onto the overgrown lawn below. They didn't stop running until they were far from the house, panting and shaking. When they finally dared to look back, the house stood silent and still, as if nothing had happened. But as they stared, they saw her, the little girl standing in the window watching them with those hollow eyes. Her mouth moved soundlessly, mouthing two words they would never forget. "Come back." They ran, vowing never to return, but deep down they knew the truth. Oakwood House wasn't done with them. They could still hear the faint whisper in the wind echoing through the empty streets on Halloween night. Come back. It was Halloween night, and the Anderson family was bubbling with excitement. The house was decked out with cobwebs, plastic spiders, and jack-o'-lanterns that flickered with an eerie orange glow. The children, Lily and Max, had their costumes on. Lily, a glowing fairy, and Max, a devilish little imp. Their parents, Sarah and Ben, were getting ready to head out to a Halloween party at the local community centre. They had planned for weeks, and now, finally, the night had come. But there was one thing they hadn't planned for: Grandma Edna. Grandma Edna had always been a bit different. At 85, her mind had started to wander, and she often spoke of strange things, whispers in the walls, shadows that moved of their own accord, and a sense that something was watching her when she was alone. The family tried to be patient with her, but it was clear she needed someone to watch over her. They couldn't leave her home alone tonight. But when Ben offered to cancel their plans, Edna had insisted that they go. "I'll be fine," she'd said with a voice that was barely above a whisper, her old eyes glinting with an unreadable expression. So, with a mix of reluctance and guilt, the family left. They kissed her on the cheek, assured her they would be back soon, and locked the door behind them. As the family made their way to the party, the night air was cool, crisp, with the sharp scent of autumn leaves, but in the Anderson home, things were far from calm. Inside, Grandma Edna sat in her favorite rocking chair by the fireplace, a thick wool blanket draped over her lap. The flickering flames cast long shadows on the walls. The house seemed unusually quiet, too quiet. Every creak of the old wood floor sent a shiver down her spine. She didn't know why, but tonight felt different. And then she heard it. A soft tap on the window, almost too soft to notice. Edna's frail hand trembled as she reached for her glass of water, but before she could lift it, the tapping grew louder, more insistent. Tap, tap, tap. Her heart raced, and her breath hitched. She slowly stood up, her bones creaking in protest, and moved towards the window. She peered outside but saw nothing, just the bare branches of the old oak tree swaying in the wind. Just the wind, she muttered to herself, but the unease still gnawed at her. Something wasn't right. Suddenly the room grew colder. A thick chill seeped into her bones, and the flames in the hearth flickered, casting strange shadows that seemed to stretch unnaturally. Edna's old eyes widened as a figure appeared in the corner of the room, barely visible in the dim light. It was a woman, standing just beyond the reach of the firelight, her face hidden by the shadows. Her clothes were tattered, soaked as if she had just emerged from a storm. The figure didn't move. but Edna could feel her presence. The air itself seemed to grow heavier, like the room was suffocating under the weight of her gaze. "Who are you?" Edna whispered, her voice trembling. The figure stepped closer. Her face came into view, pale and gaunt, with hollow eyes and a twisted smile that stretched too wide, too unnatural. Edna's heart pounded, but her body wouldn't move. Her legs were rooted to the floor. And then the whispers began. "Join us. Join us. Join us forever." The voice was soft, distant, yet it filled the room like a chorus. The shadows seemed to press in, warping around the woman's form, until the room itself seemed to twist and distort, as if reality was tearing apart. Another figure appeared, then another, each one more horrific than the last. Some had faces twisted in agony, others with eyes that gleamed like black holes. They whispered, murmured, moaned, their voices a chorus of longing. Edna gasped for breath, but the air was thick, choking. Her vision blurred as the room spun. The spirits surrounded her, their cold fingers brushing her skin, their laughter like nails on a chalkboard. She tried to scream, but her voice was swallowed by the darkness. And then, as if time itself had snapped, everything went quiet. The shadows receded, the coldness vanished, and the oppressive atmosphere lifted. The figures were gone. But Edna wasn't alone. A cold hand touched her shoulder, and a voice, this time real, familiar, called her name. "Mom? Are you okay?" Ben's voice snapped her out of her trance. The front door creaked open and the Anderson family walked in, their laughter dying in their throats as they saw the expression on Edna's face. Her eyes were wide, frozen in terror. She was sitting motionless in the rocking chair, her hand still clutching the blanket. But there was something worse, something they didn't notice right away. The flames in the fireplace had gone out. The room was freezing cold, and the air smelled faintly of decay. Edna's body was stiff, lifeless. Her skin had turned an unnatural shade of grey, and her mouth hung open in a silent scream. The terror that had filled her eyes moments before was now locked in time, her face forever frozen in a grimace of horror. As Ben knelt beside her, his heart sinking, a single whisper filled the room, just a faint echo, as if the spirits had never truly left. "Join us. Forever." The door slammed shut, and the house fell silent once more. The Anderson family would never speak of that night again. But every Halloween, the house at Thornfield Manor would seem to grow colder. And sometimes, late at night, you could hear a soft tapping on the window. On a misty Halloween night, Tom and Sarah moved into their newly bought home on the outskirts of town. The place was old and worn, with creaky floors and chipped walls, but its charm had drawn them in. They looked forward to a peaceful life, away from the noise of the city, and tonight they decided to enjoy their first evening together in their cozy new home. They lit the fireplace, poured themselves glasses of wine, and snuggled up under a thick blanket on the couch. Outside, fog rolled in, blanketing the landscape and giving their home an isolated, eerie feel. Despite the calm, a faint unease nagged at Sarah. She brushed it off as nerves from the move and reminded herself to relax. But the strange feeling crept back every now and then, growing stronger as the hours passed. Just as midnight approached, the power flickered and then went out completely. Their cozy room was plunged into darkness. Tom sighed, thinking it was probably a blown fuse, but Sarah couldn't shake the eerie feeling. They grabbed a flashlight from the drawer and began to search for the circuit breaker. As they passed the hallway, Sarah heard something, a faint sound like someone whispering. She froze, gripping Tom's arm tightly. "Did you hear that?" she whispered, her voice shaking. Tom turned to her, slightly amused but trying to reassure her. "It's an old house, babe. Probably just the wind." But the whisper grew louder, echoing through the darkened hallways, as though coming from deep within the house. It was a voice, low and mournful, muttering words they couldn't quite make out. Tom's face paled. He tried to laugh it off, but now he was just as spooked. Maybe we should just wait in the car until the power comes back. But as they turned toward the front door, they heard it slam shut. Their flashlight flickered as Tom's hand trembled. The whispering continued, louder now, almost chanting. They froze, trying to make out the words, but they were twisted and warped, each syllable crawling through the air with an unnatural weight. Then, suddenly, footsteps sounded down the hallway. Heavy, deliberate. They both gasped, staring into the darkness, waiting for the light to reveal whatever was coming toward them. Tom tightened his grip on the flashlight, calling out, "Who's there?" But there was only silence. The footsteps had stopped, leaving an oppressive, suffocating quiet in their wake. Then, the air grew icy. Their breaths formed small clouds, and Sarah's teeth chattered. A shadow moved at the edge of the flashlight's beam, and for a brief moment they saw it. A figure, tall and thin, with hollow black eyes and a face twisted in a hateful sneer. It looked straight at them, its mouth opening wide, revealing rows of jagged, rotting teeth. Sarah screamed, but no sound escaped her throat. Tom pulled her back, his heart pounding, his mind racing. They ran for the basement, thinking it was the only place to hide. They barricaded themselves inside, clutching each other in the cold, musty darkness. The footsteps resumed, louder now, pacing directly above them. It was as though the figure knew exactly where they were, and it was toying with them. Suddenly, there was scratching at the basement door, the sound of long, sharp nails dragging slowly, deliberately against the wood. Tom held Sarah close, whispering reassurances he didn't believe. They both sat frozen, their ears straining to hear every scratch, every footstep. But the noise stopped. After minutes that felt like hours, there was silence once again. Then, from the darkness, a whisper. "I see you." The words echoed through the basement, chilling them to the bone. They held their breaths, waiting for what would come next, but there was nothing, just silence. As dawn broke, they found the house empty. The front door was wide open, yet nothing seemed amiss. They tried to tell themselves it was just a nightmare, but both knew the truth. Something in that house had seen them, and every Halloween night after, Tom and Sarah could swear they heard faint footsteps in their own hallway, just outside their bedroom door.